Number 10. Apocalypse. There is a whole reality based on the question of what would happen if Apocalypse was unable to be stopped, if he basically, just pushed through and stopped holding back. This reality is known as Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse. And in this world, Apocalypse becomes pretty much inevitable thanks to the early demise of one man, Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. The reality of Age of Apocalypse just goes to show you what a force Apocalypse is, and if an alternate reality where Apocalypse literally rules the world isn't enough to convince you of how unstoppable this villain can be, you can also turn to a more recent X-Men event, Ten of Swords, aka the Otherworld Tournament. During this fight, Apocalypse faced his wife, who was possessed by Annihilation, and even against the seemingly unbeatable foe that was Annihilation, Apocalypse somehow managed to win, saving his wife and freeing her from the influence of the Golden Helm, while also saving basically all of Krakoa, mutant kind, and Otherworld. Yeah, so this wasn't his most villainous moment per se, but normally Apocalypse is a villain, and this just serves as another example to show you another time when he decided to stop holding back, so there you go. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button and turning on that bell so you don't miss out on any good old nerdy content. Number 9. Darkseid. Jack Kirby, the famed writer, artist, and comic book creator, created Darkseid, who made his first appearance in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen issue 134 in 1970. Darkseid is a tyrannical ruler of the planet Apokolips, and is depicted as a new god in his comic book appearances. His ultimate goal is to gain control over the anti-life equation and to eliminate all hope and free will in sentient beings, basically enslaving the multiverse. He is considered one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe and is known as one of Superman's most formidable enemies, and honestly, the Justice League's probably most formidable enemy. For most heroes, it's considered somewhat of an honor to have faced and beaten Darkseid one-on-one. Darkseid was originally known as Prince Euaxus, the son of Yuga Khan and Queen Hegra of Apokolips. He seized control of the planet from his older brother, Drax, by eliminating him when Drax attempted to claim the fabled Omega Force, with Euaxus betraying his brother and taking the Omega Force for himself. With his newfound power, Euaxus' skin turned to stone and he took on a new name, Darkseid. But that's not all. While he is the ruler of Apokolips, Darkseid has also succeeded in the past in conquering Earth, at least temporarily, using the anti-life equation, refusing to hold back once he had it in his possession. Number 8. Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be a not so real threat at times. Still, with the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely dupe, I would say, the entire world. And even when he was quote-unquote defeated, he still kind of did just that. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even when he seemingly perished, he actually still managed to succeed in this goal. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all, get that, all of the X-Men, by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and school. Yikes. In other words, just because something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still, maybe fear it. A great illusion obviously can be more persuasive in some cases than reality itself, especially if you can't see reality because Mysterio's creating an illusion. Number 7. Hecate. While they may have not known it at the time, Hecate was also a very powerful Justice League foe. Here, interactions with the Justice League and her manipulation of them were not even recognized by the JLA themselves, but instead were taken note of by Justice League Dark, which is basically like Justice League, but they just do magic stuff and they work in the basement. Hecate would threaten the very makeup of the universe when she refused to hold back in the pages of Justice League Dark. And, she almost won, so gotta take that into account. Number 6. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain who might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of like a global level supervillain threat. When you think of someone who's, I don't know, unstoppable, who doesn't, hold back. Usually we think of him as being a little bit more reserved. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Doctor Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. After all, when Doc Ock chose to stop holding back, and he did, when he lay on his deathbed, he was able to seemingly do something most villains have struggled for years to do: permanently defeat Spider-Man. Spider-Man by tricking him into swapping bodies with him, which is pretty crazy. And then for a while we thought Spider-Man was literally gone, but he wasn't, because comics. Number 5. Upside Down Man. While not officially stated as such, the Upside Down Man is kind of godlike in his appearance in DC Comics. He is, I would say, the dark reflection of Hecate, who is quite dark herself, clearly, so that's saying something, as she is considered to be a goddess and powerful witch. So I think this means we can basically consider him to be at a god level or beyond, honestly, when he wants to be. And of course, Upside Down Man proved how brutal he could be when he chose to attack all of reality, threatening to devour the entire multiverse in Justice League Dark. Number 4. Chthon. For those who are not familiar, Chthon is often attached to Scarlet Witch in Marvel Comics and is a demonic elder god, one of the oldest entities in the Marvel Universe. He is the one who is often believed to have granted Scarlet Witch her chaos magic abilities, and has been known from time to time to possess Wanda, as such, using her as his host. While Doctor Strange has faced and defeated Chthon before, there have been times when the villain has proven to be even too powerful for other super powerful magic users to handle, like Doctor Strange, and even himself often a villain, Doctor Doom. At one point, Chthon threatened to bridge the gap between his realm and Earth, using the Darkhold as a kind of bridge. He assumed a physical form and threatened to basically conquer Earth. The only one who was able to stop him was Scarlet Witch, and even then, Wanda couldn't defeat him permanently, and instead kept him imprisoned within his own book, the Darkhold, which she keeps basically within herself, using the text in Chthon to basically bolster her own power. I'm sure nothing can go wrong with that, right? Number 3. Anti-Monitor. The Justice League has many powerful villains, but the Anti-Monitor is one of honestly the most terrifying. His control of the antimatter universe and the ability to threaten the multiverse make him an unstoppable force. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Anti-Monitor refused to hold back and caused massive, and I mean massive, destruction, as his determination to end everything terrified readers. Even after his defeat, the threat remained, as Necron held his body, taking it and actually repurposing it to be used as a power source for the Black Central Power Battery. I mean, Black Lanterns are not good, they are bad guys, but at the end of the day, you have to admit at least they're good at recycling. Number 2. Enchantress. Oddly enough, despite both being very much tied to the world of magic over at Marvel Comics, Enchantress doesn't often get to face off against people like the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, which you would think she would because she's a very magical villain and he's a very magical hero. However, during the Acts of Vengeance crossover event, she did end up getting matched up for battle with him in his series, Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme. In issue number 12, we see these two face off, and Enchantress, along with Executioner, proves to be actually too much, even for Doctor Strange to handle, which might surprise you, but that's how it went. First of all, he is successfully seduced into attending a meeting with Amora the Enchantress in the evening, not even seemingly recognizing her as the Enchantress previous to her reveal. Then they begin to battle, and Enchantress and Executioner's Asgardian heritage makes them seemingly too much for Strange to handle. Fortunately, Clea shows up just in time to save his magic butt, but as with many other superhero battles against Enchantress, Strange honestly got lucky. I feel like a lot of people get lucky when they fight Enchantress because she is always a powerhouse, and she often does not hold back, to be real with you. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may currently be defeated in the comics, make no mistake that the Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of DC Comics' Dark Multiverse. I miss the Dark Multiverse. Batman Who Laughs hails from Earth -22 and is a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker Venom. When Batman Who Laughs stops holding back, you honestly better watch out. Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat God, and later go on to ally himself with and later even betray, if you can believe it, Perpetua, revealing the whole time that he actually planned to conquer the multiverse himself, so he might shape it in his own image, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history. You know that you're a crazy villain when you're just like betraying villains like left and right and being like, oh, this was actually part of my plan the whole time, to go with you, betray you, and then take over the multiverse. That's crazy.
At number 10 is Thanos. In the realm of Marvel villains, Thanos stands as the epitome of ruthless power. Unlike many intergalactic adversaries, what sets Thanos apart isn't just his immense strength, but the brutal lengths he'll go to accomplish his goals. Comparisons to Darkseid or Galactus don't even encapsulate this unique malevolence. Thanos isn't merely a conqueror. He's a sadistic force, destroying entire civilizations without flinching. His atrocities range from wiping out innocent lives across galaxies to unleashing nuclear devastation on his own homeworld Titan. His cruelty extends even to his own family, eliminating his parents, inflicting excruciating torment on Gamora and Nebula, his children, and callously unaliving countless other offspring. The Mad Titan's unyielding, merciless nature is what cements his position among the most brutal Marvel villains. The sheer magnitude of suffering he inflicts goes beyond mere conquest. It embodies a dark, unrelenting tyranny that renders him a force to be feared and impossible to stop. At number 9 is Carnage. In the realm of Marvel villains, some are driven by attention, necessity, or the sheer enjoyment of taking lives. Enter Cletus Cassidy, the genesis of the maniacal Carnage. The union of these two characters were born in prison, alarmingly showing the signs of cruelty. See, Cletus had pushed his grandmother down a staircase, attempting to electrocute his mother, and horrifically unalived his mother's dog, and that was just the beginning. Upon bonding with the symbiote in prison, turning into Carnage, Cassidy's malevolence, he became a frightful adversary for Spider-Man. Carnage embodies the true essence of a remorseful villain, capable of unthinkable acts without a second thought. His disregard for life towards literally anyone who crosses his path makes him an unnerving threat. This character's unbridled brutality and unpredictability sets him apart, making him a nightmare not just for Spidey, but anyone unfortunate to face him. If you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it if you did. At number 8 is Kang the Conqueror, a formidable force in Marvel's villainous realm. He embodies the essence of unyielding power and strategic brilliance. This figure, hailing from a distant future, stands as a testament to relentless domination. His insatiable thirst for conquest and war has shaped his identity. Clad in battle-ready armor, Kang doesn't merely orchestrate conflicts, he actively engages in the fray, demonstrating his prowess as a skilled combatant. He targets the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, not merely for conquest, but to prove his superiority. His elaborate schemes serve as a testament to his cunning intellect, yet at his core, Kang relishes combat. He's not merely about outsmarting his adversaries, he craves the raw thrill of testing his strength against the best. Kang's relentless pursuit of victory and the unyielding desire to assert his dominance make him an uncontainable force, a figure whose brutal prowess remains an unrelenting threat to all who oppose him. At number 7 is Green Goblin. Brutal Marvel villains like the Green Goblin stand out for their relentless schemes and emotional impact on superheroes, and Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin showcased an unmatched level of villainy by orchestrating Gwen Stacy's tragic demise, creating an event that scarred Spider-Man emotionally. This act solidified the Green Goblin as Spider-Man's most formidable adversary, inflicting profound psychological torment on the Wallcrawler. His manipulation from the Clone Saga to causing Peter Parker to be the unwitting catalyst in Gwen Stacy's fall emphasizes the depth of the Green Goblin's cruelty. Notably, even when compared to other antagonists like Dr. Octopus, it's the emotional toll that the Green Goblin inflicts that makes him stand out. The intricacies of the emotional trauma inflicted upon Peter Parker by the Green Goblin's actions illustrate the unparalleled impact of this brutal Marvel villain. At number 6 is the evil Hulk from Age of X. In Age of X, the X-Men had found themselves entrenched in a never-ending battle against their extinction, defending their last mutant stronghold against the mutant-hating Avengers. This era reshaped the Avengers into a government-backed mutant hunting unit where Dr. Bruce Banner, involved in mutant experiments, inadvertently underwent a horrific transformation. The Hulk's tragic metamorphosis, triggered during a mutant sterilization experiment gone awry, resulted in a devastating loss of control. His uncontrollable rage led to the brutal demise of his colleagues and even his fiancée, fueling an intense animosity towards mutants for some reason. Unbeknownst to many, his role in the Avengers was a last-ditch strategy, if they failed, a plan that led to his demise when he attempted to unleash a chemical on Fortress X. This Hulk stands as a chilling reminder of the brutal force that, even in the face of adversity, cannot be easily subdued. At number 5 is Bullseye. Bullseye is a menacing figure in the Marvel Universe, embodying the epitome of relentless brutality. A mercenary with a chilling penchant for evil, his proficiency in wielding various projectiles elevates him to a league of his own. His lethal accuracy with any thrown weapon renders him a formidable adversary, not just a master of hand-to-hand combat, combat, Bullseye boasts combat skills that would rival even the most elite fighters in the Marvel Universe. Now what sets Bullseye apart is his unwavering passion for combat, relishing in every moment as if it were his raison d'etre. His very essence thrives in the chaos of battle, a disturbingly eerie smile etched on his face throughout. Not even driven by profit, but the sheer enjoyment of his grisly craft, Bullseye's commitment to his malevolent inclinations is unwavering. His existence aligns with the philosophy that doing what one loves negates the notion of working, even if it involves the unthinkable, perhaps even eliminating people for free. At number 4 is the Void. The Void is the alter ego of Sentry, which stands as one of the most relentless villains in the Marvel Universe. As an embodiment of darkness and brutality, it mirrors Sentry's own inner turmoil. This duality makes the Void an adversary unlike any other. The idea of the Void was implanted in Sentry's mind, creating a cycle where defeating the Void becomes an endless battle. The Void's return is inevitable because it's rooted in Sentry's psyche, an integral part of his being. And despite temporary victories, the return of this villain symbolizes the enduring challenge of conquering one's inner demons. The ongoing struggle between Sentry and the Void is an age-old battle between light and darkness within oneself. At number 3 is Magneto. His actions throughout various storylines showcase his unwavering commitment to his cause, often through brutal and unforgiving methods. The iconic Fatal Attraction storyline demonstrated his sheer power as he forcibly removed the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton, an act that showcased his capacity for extreme brutality. And throughout his history, Magneto's vengeful nature has led to devastating consequences. From attacking San Francisco with mutant unaliving sentinels to sinking Soviet submarines in response to governmental insolence, his actions highlight the extremities to which he's willing to go for his beliefs. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, an embodiment of his antagonistic approach, contradicts the very idea of peaceful coexistence Xavier aims for within the X-Men. And in instances like the House of M, his rash actions led to the tragic loss of countless lives, such as against his own son Pedro. One of the most chilling instances demonstrating his mercilessness was when he gruesomely used just a paperclip to inflict fatal injuries on a scientist who resisted his interrogation. At number 2 is Sabertooth. In the world of Marvel, Sabertooth stands as a relentless nemesis, to say the least. Vicious history with the X-Men is a testament to his brutal nature. Notably, his vendetta against Wolverine is particularly savage. Sabertooth's actions extend beyond direct assaults on Logan, often targeting those closest to him, inflicting intense emotional and physical pain. A chilling example is Sabertooth's twisted tradition of attacking Wolverine on his birthday, rooted in a tragic event where he unalived Logan's partner, Silver Fox. The psychological torment doesn't stop there either. He orchestrated events that led to Wolverine tragically having to end his own son's life. Manipulation and cruelty define Sabertooth's character, making him an adversary not just in physical prowess, but also in psychological warfare. There is literally no act too morally scummy for Sabertooth. And at number 1 is Venom, a character both feared and adored. He's evolved from a ruthless supervillain to an anti-hero in the Marvel Universe. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man number 299, Venom's introduction was nothing short of menacing. Not only did he terrify Mary Jane, leaving her traumatized, but he also engaged in a lethal encounter in Our Lady of Saints Church, breaking the sanctity of the place by eliminating a police officer. These horrific acts just set the tone for Venom's malevolence. The character's brutality continued with the likes of Black Cat, whom he physically and emotionally harmed, and not to mention his actual brain eating, a horrific event that was seen in Venom: The Hunger number 1. Venom's dark history extended to Anne Wang, whose association with the symbiote ended tragically, and Lee Price, a host who willingly used the symbiote for brutal homicidal acts. The character exhibited a level of violence and evil surpassing that of many other villains, culminating in his involvement in planetary mass unaliving. The Venom's progression from villain to anti-hero is marked by a series of abhorrent deeds, showcasing a complex character torn between dark impulses and occasional acts of redemption. At number 10 is Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul isn't your typical bad guy. He's the big boss of the League of Assassins, a group that's been specializing in, you guessed it, assassinations. But there's more to him than just that. His constant swims in the Lazarus pits messed up his humanity big time. He's practically more of a devil than a regular person. Now, for those of you uninitiated in Batman lore, the Laz pits are those pools of green goo that are kind of like DC's own fountain of youth, as these supernatural reservoirs are capable of instantly healing any injury, resurrecting the deceased, or even granting immortality. Ra's discovered these pits centuries ago, go, allowing him to carry out his assassination business indefinitely. Now, while these pits are great for his mortality, this prolonged use of these pits does come at a cost to his morality. I mean, what does he really need that anyways, being a supervillain and literally the boss of an assassination business? I digress. Whenever he does take a dip in these pits, his plans get worse. Like, way worse. He goes toe-to-toe with Batman a lot, claiming that he's all about saving the planet, but here's a twist. He thinks that wiping out almost all of humanity is the way to do it. Yeah, you heard me right. Ra's al Ghul believes that the best solution for Earth is to get rid of almost everyone so that the survivors can be ruled by a chosen few. Yeah, definitely not your average bad guy. At number 9 is Lady Shiva, a top-notch assassin in Gotham City who doesn't hold back when it comes to dishing out pain. Her expertise in combat and precision unaliving makes her one of the most sought-after mercenaries in the DC multiverse, even among leagues of assassins that have skin in the game for centuries. Now, unlike other villains, Shiva isn't about physical pain. See, she knows how to hurt in various ways. You see, inflicting pain is an art form to her, so it's not just about landing punches or using weapons. No. Shiva knows that hurting someone's pride or sense of self can be just as agonizing. She's not afraid to make her victims suffer in ways that go beyond the body. Now, what sets her apart from less patient villains is her understanding that keeping someone alive allows for prolonged suffering compared to a quick demise. So while she's fully ready, willing, and definitely capable of ending lives, she prefers to keep her victims just on the edge of life, ensuring they feel every ounce of pain she inflicts for as long as possible. Lady Shiva doesn't just stop at physical harm, she's a master at making pain linger in every possible way. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing the notification bell. It's free! At number 8 is Bane. Bane is one of Batman's toughest foes, and he didn't have an easy life. He learned to protect himself while spending his entire youth in the world's most lethal confinement center. But that protection and need for self-defense eventually turned into a liking for violence. At the age of only 8, he committed his first unaliving. Yeah, while y'all were probably still potty training, Bane was out here terminating folks. As he got older, things got even more intense. Some scientists forcibly used him as a guinea pig to test out this substance called Venom, which I wish was the Venom from Marvel, but no. In this case, it's basically steroids on steroids. Bane got addicted to it and gained super strength. His unique mix of both strategic brains and excessive brawn make him a huge danger to Batman and frankly all of Gotham. What makes Bane especially frightening is his habit of breaking Batman's back. It's like he's always trying to prove he's the toughest, scariest guy around, and with his strength and smarts, it's hard to disagree. At number 7 is Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy is a swampy figure in the DC comics who's typically portrayed as, how do you put it nicely so he doesn't come after me, a bit dumb. Now, don't get me wrong, Grundy isn't your run-of-the-mill villain. He's often played as a pawn, easily tricked into doing bad stuff by the big baddies. Now, sometimes though, he hangs with the good guys, but that's exceedingly rare. See, the thing about Grundy is he's a bit of a wild card. When someone's got a hold on him, he's like their attack dog. Imagine being nearly impossible to knock out and always up for causing trouble. That's basically Grundy in a nutshell. His loyalty to whoever's pulling his strings combined with his own stubbornness make him a real wrecking ball. Now, since he's already undead, putting him down is seriously tough. So he doesn't get knocked out often, which means he's always ready to dish out some serious hurt. It's like dealing with a force of nature that's not gonna stop until he's done with you. At number 6 is Professor Pig. Within the realm of Batman's rogues gallery, there's this guy named Professor Pig. Now, he's not your typical villain. Think of him as a mix between Dr. Frankenstein and the story of Pygmalion. But instead of stitching corpses together or sculpting statues, he's into creating what he calls Dollotron. Now, these Dollotrons aren't the kind of dolls you want to play with, as they're made from still living amalgamations of humans and animals. Now, Pig isn't just about scaring people or causing chaos for the fun of it. Nay, to him, it's a job, a calling, if you will. But the way he operates is just seriously disturbing. He's more about making these messed up creations using crazy chemicals, bioweapons, and surgeries, all in the name of his noble cause to mold the perfect being. But in the creepiest way possible. His methods are seriously disturbing, even by Gotham's standards. He doesn't go around unaliving or torturing just because he gets a kick out of it, but it's his way of doing things that's seriously messed up. And number 5 is Black Mask. Gotham's got its fair share of bad guys, but Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask, definitely takes the cake for being the nastiest mob boss around. His crime syndicate, the False Face Society, makes the other gangs in town look like boy bands. Now what makes Black Mask stand out? Well, he's not exactly picky about how he gets the job done. Blades, fists, anything goes. He doesn't just stop at stealing or cheating, he revels in causing pain. The dude is so twisted that even Catwoman, who usually avoids ending lives, felt compelled to put an end to him after enduring his torment for so long. It's not just Catwoman either. Black Mask's brutality didn't sit well with Batman either. When he threatened Oracle and tortured Spoiler, Batman was inches away from crossing his moral line and taking Black Mask out himself. Pushing Batman to cross his moral boundary, that's something the Joker dreams of doing, so you know that this guy is extra twisted. At number 4 is Killer Croc. aka Waylon Jones, he embodies his name with the ferocity that matches his reptilian appearance. Bullied as a child due to his unusual looks, Jones embraced his monstrous facade, transforming into the menacing Killer Croc. His isolation fueled a disturbing transformation, leading to animalistic behaviors and extreme violence. Croc's brutality is very chilling. In most renditions, he resorts to eating people and vicious attacks using his bare claws and teeth. See, unlike other villains, he shuns conventional weapons, preferring to savage his victims directly. Unprovoked, he preys on unsuspecting individuals who wander into his territory within Gotham's murky sewers. This unrelenting savagery marks Killer Croc as one of Batman's most brutally formidable foes, embodying the darkness that exists lurking in Gotham's shadows. At number 3 is Victor's Pizzazz. Now Victor over here is one of those really intense Batman villains. He's not like the others who might just rob a bank or cause a little bit of chaos. Nay, this guy is all about the unaliving. And he's not just into it, he believes life doesn't even matter. Imagine that. Each person he takes out, he actually sees as doing them a favor. And it's not just that he doesn't care, he actually enjoys taking lives. Like, a bit too much. When he's taking somebody down, it's not your average kind of unaliving you'd see in a comic book. It's super gruesome, like horror movie level stuff. Seriously, they should put a big warning on those comics because it gets super graphic. And get this, after each unaliving, he marks himself with a tally on his body. You look at him and you just see how messed up things have been because of all those scars he's covered with. It's a chilling reminder of the sheer violence he's dished out in Gotham City. At number 2 is the Electrocutioner. There have been a few guys in Batman comics that have taken up the Electrocutioner mantle, but they aren't your typical heroes. The first and second iteration were kind of like Batman, trying to do what they thought was right, but they were all about their own form of electric justice, which sometimes got pretty shocking. Then there comes the third Electrocutioner, brother of the first one. He starts out trying to be a good guy too, but things quickly go sideways. He starts getting a kick out of zapping people with his electric gear, and that's when he goes off the rails and delves into a life of crime. This guy becomes seriously dangerous, working for a nasty crime boss called the Blockbuster. Basically, these Electrocutioner dudes might have started off with good intentions, but they ended up on the wrong side of things. They're like Batman's twisted mirror images, using their shock gadgets to hurt people instead of helping them. And at number 1 is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's transition into an anti-hero hasn't stopped her from being a formidable force, to say the least. Now, while she's not keen on hurting innocent folks, she's all about dishing out punishment to those she thinks deserves it. What makes her stand out is her choice of weapons, either a massive mallet or a good old baseball bat. With those, she gets up close and personal, shattering bones like it's nobody's business. Take the DCAU movie Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, for example. There, she sings a twisted version of If You're Happy and You Know It, belting out, If You're Happy and You Know It, smash ahead, bang bang. All while crushing Darkseid's minions' skulls with each line. Harley Quinn's love for demolishing crania is undeniable, making her one of the most brutal Batman villains who definitely isn't holding back.
Number 10. The Inheritors. The Inheritors are Morland's crew and family. The clan Morland himself is also a part of. They're a powerful energy vampire clan which hunt down various totems and consume them. Because yeah, there aren't just spider totems out out there apparently. I want to know though, are there anteater totems, and can I be one? Please write me into a comic as an anteater totem, someone, please. Spider totems, for those who don't know, are spider folks from across the multiverse who are basically destined to end up being connected to the spirit of the spider, either possessing powers related to the spider or some other important connection which generally gives them purpose. The inheritors ended up getting control over the Master Weaver and used their knowledge and power to traverse the multiverse and hunt down spider totems within it. The inheritors are generally led by Solus or Morlun, and the clan has included Verna, Genix, Karn, Bora, Brix, Dara, Deimos, Malos, Mortia, Namura, and Thanos. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it feeds the algorithm and it feeds my soul. Number 9. Miriam Drew, or rather, a bunch of Miriam Drews. Miriam's Drews. Many of them. An army of them. A clone army of Miriam Drews. Who was Miriam Drew, you might be asking? Jessica Drew's mother. In the previous Spider-Woman series by Carlo Pacheco and Pere Perez, Jessica had to face off against a bunch of her mom's clones, after learning that the woman whose base she was in wasn't really her mother, but instead a clone of her. After watching her mom go from loving and considerate, seemingly having missed her daughter, to violent and aggressive, blaming Jessica for basically everything that had gone wrong in her life, Jessica then basically had to fight off an entire army of her mom's clones, ultimately. Like Jess at the time, her clone moms were also juicin', which also made them scary foes to face both in form and in power. If you don't believe me, read the series. Number 8. Zodiac. Zodiac is a blast from the past. He was a villain who was first introduced in 2010, but only recently reappeared in the comics, pledging to become Moon Knight's sworn nemesis. A very different vibe from Raul Bushman, honestly. Zodiac reminds me more of Joker or Deadpool when it comes to his antics. He's both brilliant, but also criminally insane. But it is his penchant for creative and deadly thinking that makes him honestly so dangerous. Like when he took on Moon Knight's ally, Reese, a vampire, not with a cross around his neck, but instead wearing his own name around his neck, as he clarified that it actually wasn't the cross vampires were weak to, it was faith, and Zodiac believes devoutly in only one thing: Zodiac. Number 7. Tyler Stone. Alchemax is a future villainous corporation from the 2099 Marvel Universe of Earth 928. But of course, a corporation is only ever as evil as the people behind it. One of which is, of course, Tyler Stone, the Vice President of Alchemax's R&D department. Tyler Stone is not only VP of Research and Development at Alchemax, but he is also secretly Miguel O'Hara's, aka Spider-Man 2099's, biological father. Miguel doesn't learn until later on that he is Stone's son, and ends up working for Alchemax as a brilliant geneticist. When he tries to leave, however, it is Stone who slips him the highly addictive and expensive substance, Rapture, made exclusively by Alchemax, to prevent him from leaving. Fortunately, Miguel manages to free himself by becoming his own experimental test subject, accidentally becoming the spider-like hero, Spider-Man 2099. Number 6. Zombie Ant-Man. In the Marvel Zombies world, Black Panther was one of the sole survivors when the zombies first attacked, and turned most of his friends into zombified versions of themselves. One such former friend, Hank Pym, actually just managed to trick T'Challa into coming with him. Or well, he almost did. Either way, Hank managed to trick T'Challa enough to get him to a place where he could basically incapacitate him and then hide him away. Having already begun to change himself, Hank basically planned to use Black Panther, his friend, as a food source. Because Hank is a genius, which means when he's a zombie, he's a really dangerous genius. Hank kept him locked away and alive while slowly savoring and devouring his friend. Fortunately, Black Panther would escape and even become the leader of a land of survivors, although he would eventually turn into a zombie himself, much later on. But lesson learned, watch out for zombie Hank Pym if there's a zombie apocalypse. Number 5. Taskmaster. In the comics, Tony Masters is Taskmaster, and he is well known as an Avengers villain. And it is through his clashes with that team that Taskmaster also became a recurring villain of Hawkeye as well. Now, you might not know it to just look at Taskmaster, but the two have had some pretty epic fights over the years, with Masters himself also possessing marksmanship skills to rival that of, get this, Hawkeye himself, and also being known as a villain who is proficient with the use of a bow and trick arrows. In the comics, Taskmaster has has an eidetic memory, or a photographic memory, that also extends to him being able to replicate pretty much any abilities or skill sets that he sees. So while he can also mimic Hawkeye's skills and abilities, he can also match the fighting style of pretty much anyone he watches, as well as learn their specific skill set too, just from watching it, as long as it isn't a superpower specific skill like, you know, flying. Taskmaster is also known for being a brilliant tactician as a mercenary, and often uses strategic thinking to take down opponents who are more powerful than him, which is why he's one you honestly need to watch out for. Number 4. Xemnu. Xemnu is also known as the Living Hulk, and is a being that uses hypnosis powers to take control of others' minds. On more than one occasion, he has attempted to use these powers to try and conquer Earth and bend the minds of its entire populace to his will. In fact, while he's also attempted this feat in the pages of Immortal Hulk, this was also something he tried in his very first appearance. Back then he was trying to mind control the human race in order to get them to build a ship to basically return him home. Doesn't sound like such an evil plan until you realize the force that the ship would have to create would basically rip the Earth asunder once that ship took off, due to the great force that it would need for that launch. So, pretty evil. Number 3. High Evolutionary. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the High Evolutionary is truly a villain to be feared. And honestly, when I found out that the High Evolutionary was going to be in the MCU, I was like, man, that's gonna be lame, because on paper, he's another kind of silly character, especially when you consider that he's often used as a scapegoat for retcons, bizarre origins, and honestly pretty weird plot points. The fact remains though, the High Evolutionary, as the film proves, is truly the be-all and end-all of Marvel's mad science department, and the god complex he has in the MCU basically sums up so beautifully what is so frightening about him when you really think about it. He thinks he's perfecting life, when really he's basically warping and polluting it. Number 2. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and while he might not look that intimidating, he's definitely proven himself to be deadly in the past. Initially, Thanos was hunting down Thane because he feared Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's basically afraid that Thane will rise up and overtake him, but in the end this wasn't something that Thanos really had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after he became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to somehow defeat Thane, and this was also at a point when Thanos seemed himself to kind of be dying. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life, or at least until some writer remembers he's still down there and decides to pull him back up again. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son, and are also pretty OP, I gotta say. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, basically killed anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which honestly sounds awful. Honestly, while he's in prison for now, I'd watch out whenever he gets out of that God Quarry and is free again. Number 1. Monarch. I feel like we're always sleeping somewhat on Jamie Braddock here, and we honestly don't talk about him enough, so I'm gonna bump him up to the top spot this time around. Monarch to you. Monarch is known for his reality warping powers, and while not always a villain, most of the time in the comics he has basically been a villain. What makes him different from other reality warping characters, and namely mutants out there? Monarch's powers work on a quantum level, and although there are people who can influence Monarch's powers by manipulating his mind, he also is pretty powerful as someone who can basically just make things happen by thinking them into existence. Yeah. He is the elder brother of twins Brian and Elizabeth Braddock, but despite being related to heroes, he seldom is one himself.
Starting off our list at number 10 is Apocalypse. If it wasn't for his goal of mutant domination and evolution, Apocalypse would vaporize the X-Men whenever he wanted to, and even if that wasn't how he did it, he has the capacity to wipe out the X-Men in a whole handful of ways. For starters, Apocalypse is what is called an external. These are mutants who are immortal, share a psychic connection, and who can revive themselves, so he can just never be permanently taken down, and he has been around for about 5,000 years. Apocalypse's original mutant ability was to be able to control his molecular structure, but over time, with the mentality of survival of the fittest, he has enhanced his abilities and even gained new ones through the use of celestial technology, celestial armor, and at least 2 different techno-organic viruses. He can do a lot with his molecular manipulation, including heal himself and turn his limbs into simple melee weapons, but also technologically complex weapons like plasma cannons. But I think the most impressive thing he can do is consciously and subconsciously grant himself a huge amount of powers at will. That makes him too much for the MCU already, and we haven't even talked about his celestial energy manipulation, his psionic abilities, or any of his countless horsemen of the apocalypse, all of whom were given power boosts by this unstoppable mutant. Coming in at number 9 is Thanos. Now before you come for me in the comments about how Thanos is literally already in the MCU, I want to point out the little fact that the version of Thanos from the MCU is like a schoolboy compared to the comic book version of Thanos. Thanos in the comics is an absolute monster. In the MCU, Thanos is fueled by an altruistic motive to help the universe. In the comics, he straight up enjoys taking people's lives. Thanos is essentially an omnicidal maniac. He's extremely prideful, violent, deceptive, malevolent, treacherous, and ruthless to the point that he doesn't care about sacrificing innumerable planets and civilizations, even his own race, in order to praise his love, Mistress Death, and gain her affection. Thanos also possesses an insatiable hunger for power, always seeking to obtain objects of incalculable might and influence, such as the cosmic cubes or the infinity gems. He does all that while speaking in a super sophisticated, calm, and collected demeanor, which they did get right in the MCU, I'll give them that. Not only that, but being a massive hulking Eternal with a deviant gene, Thanos is one of the most powerful of the Eternals of Titan, with an innate ability to synthesize cosmic energy, allowing for energy and matter manipulation. Thanos in the MCU is no pushover, sure, but comic book Thanos, he puts him to shame. Number 8, Zom. We have seen the character of Dormammu in the MCU. He was an insanely powerful mystical entity who Doctor Strange had to basically lose to a million times and trick to defeat. Well, it took all of comic book Dormammu's power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain the extra-dimensional monster known as Zom, with the magical links of living bondage and the crown of blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings only managed to trap Zom in an amphora, in a world beyond all worlds, in a time beyond all time. Well, when Umar, the sister of Dormammu, invaded Earth and Doctor Strange could not defeat her, he needed some way to put her down. The Ancient One told Doctor Strange about Zom, and Doctor Strange decided that he was going to unleash the monster to easily defeat Umar. Now, I don't know why the Ancient One thought this would be a good idea, because now, being free and not wanting to go back, Zom turned on Doctor Strange. Zom is so powerful that there was absolutely nothing that Doctor Strange could even do. Even if all the reality warping heroes and all the Avengers combined forces, they would not be able to defeat Zom. It took the power of the living tribunal, the representative of the one above all and the judge of the multiverse, who had not even been seen in Marvel Comics before this point, to just whisk him away. The tribunal then scolded Doctor Strange for summoning a being who could literally wipe out the multiverse. Zom has no other goal than to completely annihilate and destroy everything. Ever. Now, Strange has since channeled Zom in extremely dire situations, and that's the only time I could really imagine the MCU even mentioning his name. Number 7, the Void. Bob Reynolds was granted the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns after consuming the Golden Century Serum, which was a much more potent offshoot of the original Super Soldier Serum. He has photokinetic-based powers fueled by the sun itself that include molecular manipulation, immortality, insane super strength, speed, invulnerability, stamina, agility, reflexes, and senses, flight, teleportation, energy absorption and blasts, psionic abilities, and even reality warping abilities within a small area. He used his powers for the greater good of all, and he was the example of what a hero should be. He had connections to Iron Man, was active during the years just prior to the Fantastic Four's emergence. He became a role model for Spider-Man as well as an ally to the X-Men, and equal to Reed Richards and a friend to the Hulk. The thing about the Sentry is that he's accompanied by a dark persona called the Void. The Void has all the same abilities plus seemingly even more. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1,000,000 people and almost destroyed Manhattan. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it wasn't even permanent. Now later on, in the Siege event, Norman Osborn used the Sentry to attack Asgard, but this accidentally unleashed the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. Now this did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off to destroy the universe. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. They may be adding the Sentry to the MCU soon, but I seriously doubt they will make this character or his opposite as powerful as they are in the comics. Number 6. Knull. Knull is the literal eldritch god of all symbiotes. He's their creator. Knull existed before the current version of the universe ever even came to be, in the black void of nothingness. One of his very first acts after he was awoken by the light created by the foundation of the universe was creating the all-black Necrosword. This was the very first symbiote, and it was immensely powerful. Using it, Knull was able to slice the head clean off of a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to a void where he worked more and more on the sword, and eventually he broke free and went out into the universe with the intent of wiping out various gods until he was defeated and he lost the sword to Gore the God Butcher. And if we want to talk about villains who should have been more powerful in the MCU, he is top of the list. Knull then goes on to make more and more symbiotes who all share a hive mind under the control of Knull. They eventually rebel and imprison Knull inside the symbiote homeworld Clintar, but he is one of the strongest villains Marvel Comics has ever shown us. He faced off against all the Earth's heroes and nearly won. He has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unit Power, aka Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to everything that Knull represents. Number 5. Molecule Man. While attempting to fix an atomic powered device, a 1,000,000,000,000 accident occurred, bombarding Owen Reese with radiation and transforming his body. Now, this man, Owen Reese, was the most powerful being in the entire multiverse. The accident also caused a minuscule hole between Earth's dimension and another, allowing the being who would eventually become known as the Beyonder to become aware of a universe teeming with life, which would lead to the events of the first and eventually second Secret Wars. Now, Uatu the Watcher, who used to never become involved in the events of Earth, sensed the Molecule Man and the danger that he posed. He contacted the Fantastic Four, warned them of the threat, transported them to face him, and the Fantastic Four couldn't do a damn thing to the Molecule Man, until Mr. Fantastic was able to deduce that the Molecule Man could not alter the molecules of living things. But that wasn't even a real limitation of the Molecule Man. That was just a subconscious limitation that the Molecule Man put on himself. The kicker is that, in reality, Reese's accident was caused by the Beyonders themselves. They created the Molecule Man as a singularity in every reality to basically use the villain as a device that would destroy its universe. The purpose of their experiment was to eventually destroy all the Molecule Men at the same time just to see what would happen, which was a key part of the latest Secret Wars event. But Molecule Man, being used by Dr. Doom and eventually Reed Richards, was able to rebirth the entire cosmos. Could it work in the MCU? Sure, it could, but the character would just be a plot device. I doubt they would actually use him as an actual villain. Number 4. Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. This means his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel Comics who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. But Abraxas is also tied to the incredibly unstoppable cosmic entity Galactus. Whenever Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus was destroyed in a story called Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas was released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas's powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain can. So the question of how he was defeated is kind of important. In Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying the Earth. Reed Richards ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. Abraxas Axis is so unstoppable that we essentially needed a Deus Ex Machina just to defeat him. I think that if he was in the MCU, that's probably the only way they could make the story work, but I think it would basically break the whole MCU for them to do it. Number 3, Mad Jim Jaspers. When Captain Britain is sent to Earth 238 in Marvel Superheroes UK number 377 in August of 1981, we are introduced to a guy named Mad Jim Jaspers, who is the Prime Minister of England in this reality. Jim has created a cyborg called the Fury that can adapt to anything like a Sentinel can to destroy all the superpowered beings on this Earth. But that's not Jim's power. We are being delivered this information from the inside of a teapot helicopter that is immensely bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside, with the room growing and characters appearing that are already passed away or that resemble Alice in the Wonderland characters. That's because Mad Jim Jaspers is a mutant with an insane level of reality warping powers. The thing is, this character is not fully in control of his abilities. Now eventually we are introduced to an Earth 616 reality Mad Jim Jaspers who is way more powerful than his 238 counterpart. When Captain Britain pays him a visit, Jim uses his powers to make Captain Britain believe that he was dreaming and that he has woken up out of a coma. He then gets frustrated and wipes this entire reality clean to start everything fresh. Now I don't know what the likelihood of getting Captain Britain into the MCU is, with the multiverse becoming more prominent, it's more likely, but this insanely powerful reality warper is not someone who I expect will ever make an appearance anytime soon. Number 2, the Chaos King. Amatsu Mikubashi first appeared in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, and he is the Japanese god of chaos, evil, and an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Mikubashi ruled and thrived over the Earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness, and as such, his goal now is to bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, the Shinto underworld, where he remained for centuries accruing an army of Oni, Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now during the events of Ares God of War, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he had defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon, meaning he had already done that, and then he goes on to attack Olympus. And that was all after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, the Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, and the gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away, and releases the souls of the damned. He has the power to defeat Eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, this insanely powerful god of gods Hercules had to punch the Chaos King into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he had already destroyed 98.76% of the universe. They wouldn't let Gore the God Butcher be as big of a threat to the gods in the MCU as he is in the comics. The Chaos King wipes out 90% of the universe. I just don't see it happening in the MCU at this time. It's just not gonna happen. And finally, in at number 1, the One Below All. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but is essentially the equivalent to God, or the creator. Now we have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics and the MCU, but this is kinda different. The One Above All is like the god of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel Comics at one point, just to give you an idea. So the One Below All, as you can imagine, is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. Another way of looking at it is that the One Below All is the One Above All's Hulk form, although that kind of makes things a little bit more complex. The One Below All is trapped in the below place and manifests in realities through gamma and gamma mutates. Basically, this means that the Hulk and other gamma mutated beings have fractions of the One Below All's power and can be taken over by the One Below All for him to try and escape and destroy everything. In an alternate future, it actually does this, taking over Bruce Banner's body and using his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity and eradicate all life in not only this version of the cosmos, but even going into the next iteration of the universe, ensuring that nothing in that universe will continue to be. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk story, but I'm telling you, Go read that story. The one above all and the one below all seem like beings that are just too conceptual that I don't know if they'd be making it into Marvel's cinematic universe. But the other part of this is that the Immortal Hulk storyline that features the one below all is way too graphic for it to be adapted to the MCU and Disney's brand.
Number 10. Anton Arcane. He loves that rod, let me tell ya. I realize that I don't really talk too much about Anton, and honestly that's a shame because he is really creepy, and I think a fantastic, albeit kinda stinky villain. Anton Arcane is the main antagonist for Swamp Thing. While Swamp Thing is the avatar of the green, representing all plant life on the planet, Anton has been the avatar of the rot, or the gray, representing the death and decay of all things. Anton isn't always the avatar of the gray, and the gray isn't always at odds with the green. But when Anton does happen to be representing the rot, you best believe that they are enemies. And you best believe Swamp Thing better watch out, because at one point Anton was part of a plot that literally eliminated him. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, we got a villains playlist for you. You can check it out for even more good villain content. Some of my favorite things to talk about villains. Number 9. The Maker. The Maker is an alternate evil version of Reed Richards. He hails from the 1610 universe, the Ultimate Universe, where Reed ended up becoming a massive supervillain and being quite good at it besides. It's possible that this version of Reed showed us that Mr. Fantastic actually makes a better villain than he even does a hero, taking the mantle of the Maker. This alternate version of Reed Richards would later escape his universe and take up residence in the main reality of Earth 616 before ultimately making his way home once more. The Maker isn't just any old alternate of his nemesis Reed Richards, he's the most unbridled morally. This is basically Reed if you took away any moral code. He's willing to do most things that even other villains just simply aren't. Number 8. Blackfire. Blackfire is kind of like the evil version of Starfire herself. Blackfire, of course, is Starfire's much more villainous sister. The two sisters look quite similar, although Blackfire has black hair where Starfire's is red. Commander went on to become queen of her homeworld of Tamaran. For a long time, Coriander reviled Blackfire because Commander was the one responsible for her own enslavement. Yeah, Blackfire did that to her own sister. That is some pretty evil, pretty brutal stuff, I gotta be honest. While Cori would later forgive her sister and even fight alongside her, it's easy to see why I consider Blackfire to be such a brutal villain. I mean, even while Cori worked hard to forgive her sister and do all of that, this actually did not change Blackfire overnight, and she still reviled and even attempted to destroy Starfire for some time. Even though Starfire was like ready to let bygones be bygones, Blackfire was not, and she was the worst one in that relationship, honestly. Number 7. Sabertooth. Sabertooth is one of those villains who is even considered to be brutal by other villains. He's a loose cannon and does not discriminate when it comes to getting a chance to inflict pain on others, something he honestly immensely seems to enjoy, as we so evidently saw when he basically became the ruler in the pit in Krakoa, creating a version of hell in his own image. But also in the Avengers 1959 series, we get to see a retro team of much more brutal Avengers brought together by none other than Colonel Nick Fury. The team roster includes Sabertooth, Dominic Fortune, the Blonde Phantom, Kraven the Hunter, and Namora, as well as Fury, of course. During this series, one of the villainous teams our 1959 Avengers comes into contact with is known as the Ubermenschen. The Ubermenschen feature loyal former members of the Axis group in World War II. After being captured and interrogated, Fury basically passes all 4 of the female members off to Sabertooth to basically kill as he pleases. Also, you know it's bad when you're a villain and like other villains are like, ah. Number 6. Grail. Grail is the powerful daughter of Darkseid and the Amazonian assassin Myrna. Being that she is both Amazonian by birth and also a new god, she is extremely powerful. She has also been shown to possess magical abilities as well that even allow her to have some power over life and death, successfully bringing back her father Darkseid after he died. Initially though, Grail was actually born with her mother's hope that Grail would one day be the key to defeating Darkseid. However, there was also a prophecy that Grail would one day cause great destruction, with this prophecy putting her in danger shortly after she was born. Her mother Myrna gave birth to Grail at the same time that Hippolyta bore Princess Diana. Together, Myrna and her newborn were 2 of the first of the Amazons to ever leave Themyscira. Eventually, the prophecy connected to Grail would come true, with her teaming up with the Anti-Monitor initially in an attempt to defeat her father Darkseid. I think you can see where that would go with all the destruction and stuff, with her proving to be an extremely powerful villain in her own right, especially in her fight against Wonder Woman. Honestly, Wonder Woman versus Grail is like just so great. Number 5. Umar. Umar is the sister of the famous Dormammu. A lot of people know Dormammu, but not a lot of people know Umar, so I'm very happy that we get to talk about her today. I like talking about Umar. Like her brother, she is also extremely powerful and hails from the Dark Dimension. Although she too is a member of the Fall Team, their kind are not native to the Dark Dimension, but simply conquered the Dark Dimension, taking it over and making it their own dimension to rule. Dormammu actually became its true ruler, but really only because the fight to win the Dark Dimension and also trap the Mindless Ones had left his sister Umar in a weakened state. Umar and Dormammu are both members of the Fall Team, a race of beings known to be extremely powerful, energy-based beings made of basically pure magic. Umar herself has shown why you shouldn't mess with her even almost defeating her own brother at one point when the two were caught in a feud. Number 4, Upside Down Man. Upside Down Man has to be one of the most terrifying villains I have ever encountered in the comics. Seriously though. If he was adapted into live action, I do not think I would survive the sight of this villain. The Upside Down Man is a villain who first appeared in the second Justice League Dark volume from 2018 in issue number 1. He often threatens to devour our heroes, all of magic and all of reality, along with them both, peering out from the dark multiverse where he was originally contained. And you know how I feel about the dark multiverse. It is a scary place. Anything that comes out of the dark multiverse and is like, this is where I'm from, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna pass on that. That's creepy. Number 3, Nimrod. Nimrod has become even more intense in the last few years, managing to make the overall silly sounding name of Nimrod strike fear into the hearts of mutants and X-Men fans everywhere. Nimrod, despite often being associated with the idea of someone who is incompetent here in North America, is actually also a word that is defined in the dictionary as meaning a skillful hunter, just FYI. So if you think this name Nimrod sounds silly, I mean, you're not wrong, but it's also got a meaning that makes sense. That's definitely more the concept that Nimrod as a villain has become associated with. Ruthless hunter of mutants and humanity at this point. Number 2, Joker. Joker has proven time and time again that he is one of the most brutal villains in all of the DC universe, and perhaps also in all of comics at this point. He's definitely one of the most twisted villains we have over at DC, I would say. One of the prime examples of how brutal and terrifyingly insane Joker can be comes to us from Death of the Family. In this story, Joker ended up removing his face in order to reinvent himself. Needless to say, this didn't last forever, but it did last a lot longer than I would have ever expected it to, considering how long Joker's face was physically separated from his body, being cut off and basically stapled back on for a lot of the time. There was even actually a period where Joker just like fully lost his face. He did not have it, with it being physically separated from him. I think we thought he was dead at that time, but when you find out that he wasn't, it's like, wait, what's happening? It was a terrifying time, honestly, and I'm not really sure how Joker lived after doing this. I know the reason that we're kind of given in the comics is he was supposed to be immortal, but then that was disproven, so it's a weird thing. Really, he would have been opening himself up to all kinds of nasty infections with a wound that size that also never really fully seemed to ever close that I saw. Despite removing his face though, Joker would later recover and even reapply said face, eventually healing it back on, despite the fact that, to put it lightly, the face was not sanitarily stored in between, let's say. And even today, I feel like he doesn't even have any marks from when that happened. Does he have a scar? I don't know. Gotta look closer in the comics. Number 1, the Void. Sentry is his own greatest villain. For every part of the Sentry that is good, the Void, his dark alter ego, is the perfect mirror of darkness and brutality. When Sentry had to face his nemesis, he was actually just facing, basically, himself. I mean, literally, that's what's happening. The Void was known for being one of the greatest villains the Earth had ever seen, or at the very least, one of the greatest villains the Earth had ever seen. Without the Void, the Sentry cannot exist. At least that's what Bob was made to believe. While initially it was thought that the world was made to forget about the Sentry in order to protect the Earth from the Void, it was later revealed that the idea of the Void was placed into Reynolds' mind by none other than Mastermind. The Void likely only manifested because Mastermind made Bob believe that should the Sentry ever return, the devil would also appear and attack the world. Hence the manifestation of the Void, who's basically, you know, like the devil. The Void is a villain that the Sentry has at times successfully beat, but as he is in essence representative of a part of Sentry's psyche that lives within him, even when it seems like Bob has beaten the Void for good, he still eventually does return and pops back up. Inner demons can sometimes be the hardest ones to overcome. Even when you think you've gone past them, sometimes they just rear their head again and you're like, oh, gotta deal with that.